Thank you for tuning into this episode of the Movie Screeners Club podcast. I'm your host, Sophia Falk. The Movie Screeners Club is brought to you by Designing Hollywood Productions, in association with Gardena Cinema. If you want to win the chance to have your short film screened in a huge theater and the opportunity to be interviewed on our podcast, please submit your film today on our website, themoviescreenersclub.com.
Hi, I'm Josephine Zhang, and I am the writer-director of Wabi-Sabi.
And I am Michiko Whitney, and I am an actor and producer on Wabi-Sabi, and also story by Josephine and I.
We developed this story together, yes, yeah. And what Wabi-Sabi is about, it's about an insecure, half Japanese, half white woman who goes on a date because she's invited to a traditional tea ceremony, but her best friend tells her that this is a red flag for a white guy with an Asian fetish. And so we go on the date with them to see if it is or not.
Is this story inspired by true events? I hope not.
This specifically never happened to me, but I am
good.
half Japanese, half white, and I finally went to Japan for the first time this past July. But before that, I felt like I was not the best with Japanese culture, and a lot of my white guy friends knew more about Japanese culture than I did. And so this is not a true story, but maybe inspired by those events, because on this date, when we go to the tea ceremony, the guy knows more about Japanese culture than I do. So it's sort of this identity exploration and feeling like in between two cultures and like you're not enough of one, but fun. And it's fun and unexpected. There's like a 70s samurai genre twist to it, which Josephine executed very well. So yeah,
there are a lot of different little inspirations that I kind of like noticed. Do you have any like specific kind of like style inspo projects that you kind of like took some inspiration from, like the 70s samurai movies? And then also I feel like it had those little quirks and stuff that were so like classic sitcom-y, like sound effects, stuff like that. Was that always the plan, or like before you were writing it, or when you were writing it you were like, this would be perfect in this style?
Well, so it's funny you say that there's like little sitcom things in it. I had when I was writing it, I had just come off like my first like the first few staffing gigs I had as a TV writer. So I had come off of the show Dollface, and Rachel had seen that episode, and then season 2 that I wrote, which was a lot about Asian American identity, and she liked it, so she sent me a DM, and that's how we met, and it wasn't a scam, so
A catfish.
it was so like I mean, and I've always been a fan of like these female buddy comedies. It's like sometimes I like try to write a rom-com or a straight romance, and then it ends up being like a lot about female friendship. Those shows that I happened to be on, which were First Wives Club and Dollface, also celebrated that. But I'm a big fan of like, and I put it in, we had made a mood board, and I had put like Romeo and Michelle's high school reunion, which was very influential with me when I was in high school. I even like did the dance from it for my senior talent show. So that's a piece of it. And then also, I'm a big fan of Tarantino, of course, and I feel like that can that's like my basic bro side within me. And but I wanted to I think it's cool that Tarantino makes these films that are like about like women being empowered, but then it's like, well, what if we made it for ourselves? So I watched his we both watched it. Like I always heard that Lady Snowblood was the inspiration for Kill Bill. So we like watched like Lady Snowblood, and just were so inspired by like by just how the look of it, how cool it is.
I think it's like 1973 or so. Japanese film from 1973. And I don't know if he's talked about how that was one of the films that inspired him, but it's like once you watch it after, I mean, I had seen it after watching Kill Bill, and then you're like, oh, you can see this influence.
You can kind of get the connection.
Yeah. And the star of it, Mio Haji, I hope I'm not saying it wrong, but her name wrong, but she's such a it girl. She's so cool. And then I watched like the blind swordsman's daughter, I think it's called, and was enamored with her, and just like felt like Rachel's character a little bit in style could be influenced by that. And maybe you don't see all that in it, but there's definitely like maybe some of that, and then meeting like a little bit of the buddy comedy aspects of just like, Ghost World is another favorite of mine, of like just dual friendships that are a little bit too codependent sometimes too. But then they have to like go through and find themselves, and like, that's why I feel a little bit of this journey too.
Well, they say like Pink Floyd, all of their songs are like the wall of sound. I feel like I got that with this film. I could see the inspirations. I could tell that, you took little bits and pieces from all your favorites, but it was genuinely so uniquely yours, just because it was like a total rush to the senses. It was unlike anything that I was expecting, really, because it's every 2 seconds. It's very quick, and so it keeps you hooked the whole time. And I think partially that's because of the acting, and a lot of because of the direction. I think it was really, really stylized and awesome.
Thank you.
Do you guys usually lean towards like a comedy action mix, or what kind of genres do you usually like to work in?
I definitely have usually have some kind of comedy with a type of genre, I even if it's like not like this is like a little more broad, but my first short film that I ever made was a post-apocalyptic romance called In Case of Emergency, and it was also very stylized. So I love any kind of genre I can play with style. My first apprenticeship back in the day out of college was as a first intern and then PA, but in the art department on a Rodrigo Garcia film right out of college. And like it just made me like really, like before that, making my first film, I was so enraptured with production design, but then that sort of started me in the path a little bit of touching art department and just seeing how much hard work goes into it. So I find like finding the visual design of something, even if it's a comedy, because people will say, oh, comedy, you could shoot anything, you could shoot in, like any bathroom anywhere and have no lighting in it. I just think like if we're gonna make a film, let's like make it a little heightened. Let's like not make, we're not watching reality, but we're watching something that's a little elevated from that helps us, I don't know, I feel like explore our emotions more than we do in reality. And in that way, to be a little heightened, it's more truth to how we feel.
Yeah, it adds a little bit of depth to the genre, because you can do that slapsticky comedy, but at the end of the day, like, the audience isn't going to leave the theater really thinking about that movie unless it has at least a little bit of truth, and at least a little bit of heart. And so I think you nailed that. Rachel, was the plan for you to always play the lead? What came first, producer or actor in this short?
I did want to act in it, and I had come up with the idea, and then I guess the producing was, we did it together. We brought on another producer whose house we ended up filming at to create the tea house in. And so I feel like with like indie projects, it's oftentimes you are wearing multiple hats just because, you have limited resources. So you're just trying to do as much as you can. And But it was definitely helpful, like once you're on set, having another producer who can sort of be the lead producer, and then I could just focus on the, I guess, acting part of it.
Mhm.
But yeah, that's sort of, being mixed race and always auditioning and sort of, with auditioning, it's you're waiting to fit someone else's vision in a way. And so, I remember like going in for an audition, and I think they were auditioning for two friends. There was a Caucasian part and an Asian part. And I went in, and the casting director was like trying to figure out which one I was there for.
And they
So it
go,
was,
great, we don't need two actors. We can just have one.
yeah, yeah, I'll just do both. Yeah, yeah,
You go, we just cut the budget in half. This is
yeah,
great.
yeah,
Ye twins.
yeah.
Yeah, you can pull like
So,
a Parent Trap situation.
yeah. So it's like, oh, it's kind of, and by the way, like auditioning it is fun, but it's also nice to be able to have a little bit more of a say in the story or be
Mhm.
inspired by your life experiences.
Right.
And I feel like I think there are more stories told now about the mixed race experience, about the Asian American experience, but it feels a little bit more, I guess, empowering to have more of a creative say in the
Yeah.
projects.
Is this the first time that you've ever kind of played a character that really has gone through that kind of identity that you have?
I The first short film that I acted in that I also came up with a story was maybe like 7 years ago, and it's also about the mixed race experience.
Yeah,
So I guess this is not the first time I've explored that, but it's definitely a lot of what drives my creative pursuits.
for sure.
So
Yeah, and
yeah.
I think it's such an important story to tell. And I mean that's the whole point with like film nowadays is really opening the door for all of those individual stories that we wouldn't otherwise hear. And I think that's what's so amazing. We are genuinely hearing more about the either Asian American experience right now or just the Asian experience right now in film, and it's incredible. It's literally every 5 minutes we're getting like a new Asian American movie, and they're awesome. They're really great. And so hopefully, something continues to happen down the line, and we get to see more stories that need to be told like this.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think that we had been like, honestly, I grew up as a kid watching Mad TV,
Mhm.
loving, loving Miss Swan, but then later on being like, oh shit, that's kind of like making fun of my mom, and like having like, people be like, oh, your mom sounds like Miss Swan, because my mom has a
Mhm.
thick accent. My mom is Taiwanese, and and I'm half Taiwanese and mixed too,
Mhm.
and half white. And so, with this project, it was fun to meet Rachel coming on board and being like, okay, because your question had also been about like, did Rachel start as a lead? And she
Mhm.
had started as a lead with her original idea, and Rachel brought the idea of okay, I'm gonna go on like a white guy invites me on like a date to a tea ceremony.
Mhm.
And it was sort of more the angle like, oh, but I'm so embarrassed, I don't know enough of my culture. And then I just, as a little bit older than Rachel, had been like, that's actually a red flag if a white guy asks you on a first date to something super traditional like
Mhm.
that, and maybe I had been through the ringer a little bit, where it's like my last boyfriend before I got married, I had like a get out situation where I, like, after we broke up, it was like the girlfriend before him, the girlfriend after me, it was like, it's like, it's not like not holding it like interracial marriage, my dad's white, like everybody should like be together with who you love, but like there's like a line. So it's like
Mhm.
the concept of the short is like, does he cross the line of like creepiness or fetishes,
Yeah.
or cool guy just appreciating the culture? And like where I'm going with this is also, it in the evolution of the story, it became more of an ensemble. So where you have that friend who's like maybe a little jaded, gets in your head, maybe a little bit of a hypocrite. And then you also have, you know, like somebody like who is a first generation immigrant who has an accent and like has a totally different view of like what their experience is going to be like. And also because I taught English in China for a year, you know, that even the Peterson character or the white guy character is like, he's, you know, like, not to spoil anything, but it's just like you have to come from an understanding of like different people. We're living in like a more globalized time,
Mm.
and like just having people of different experiences and trying to represent the Asian diaspora in different like different phases and what it means.
Mm.
Like Asian versus Asian American was a part of it. Yeah.
Yeah, and I feel like this take is a little bit more nuanced because like talking about I mean, it's definitely like an exploration from the woman's perspective of being mixed race, but we talked about how like we didn't want Peterson to be just like want it to be so black and white with, oh, you know, white guys with Asian fetishes. And it's funny because um well, I guess I won't give away the end, but we screened our short at Japan House in Hollywood.
Mhm.
And the film that screened before us was kind of like this documentary on the Japanese tea ceremony by a white guy filmmaker.
Wow,
And
that's
in the
hilarious.
Q&A after he was like, yeah, I got it really into Japanese culture because my stepmother is Japanese. And I was like, oh, that's that's how it is sometimes, you know?
Yeah. I'm curious to know if what it was like to direct somebody who you developed the story with. Did you guys feel like you had a leg up kind of on the lead actress director relationship? Did things run smoother, or did you ever like clash with ideas? You know, Rachel, this is kind of a personal story that you brought to Josephine. Did you ever say like, actually, I think maybe I would be like this or whatever? How was that kind of dynamic on set?
I feel like once we got to set, I fully trusted
Mhm.
Josephine to do whatever she needed to do to fulfill her vision as the director. And yeah, I guess it probably helps that we had so many sessions developing the story, working on the story, and also producing together,
Mhm.
um, and having that experience. I mean, and then we also did rehearsals with the
Mhm.
whole cast, and that was super helpful. Um, so yeah, I think it probably did help. And then yeah, once we were on set, I don't know, there's probably more things behind the scenes that I wasn't even aware of because it was just again, I was like, I'm my role now is just kind of acting when
Mhm.
we were on set.
Mhm.
So, and I just fully trusted Josephine and the DP and the production designer and everyone to just sort of work together and fulfill Josephine's vision.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Josephine, how did you feel?
I mean, I feel like, yeah, we definitely had a shorthand. I think um, going into our rehearsal, like I feel Rachel knew her character really well, and I feel like we kind of had the voice already there.
Mhm.
And you know, I just also want to mention, because I know we're nearing the end, that we had a wonderful producer editor who like helped it. We mentioned that we filmed at his house. We had trouble finding a tea house.
Mhm.
Um, we had thought we had a location, but then it ended up being too pricey. So then what we ended up doing is actually building a tea room in a local Torrance filmmaker's home, who came on board as a producer and editor, and he also has worked with me in the past on my past short films, so we had a great shorthand too. So me having the, you know, sort of the the room with Rachel to develop this, and then also like a trusted person that I've collaborated with before, Jeff Mizushima. We just really and he knew the area, so we found like also another garden, the Torrance Civic Center, and it just really like became just a trusted, safe environment. I felt that I wanted to create so that everybody could feel like they could play. Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for meeting with me. This was a really great conversation. The Movie Screeners Club is produced by Designing Hollywood Productions in association with Gardena Cinema. If you want to win the chance to have your short film screened in a huge theater and the opportunity to be interviewed on our podcast, please submit your film today on our website, themoviescreenersclub.com. This episode was sponsored by Gardena Cinema.